Now, we were talking about how, generally speaking, when you're solving quadratic equations, you have three cases. You could have two solutions, you could have one solution, and then the third case is you can have complex solutions or imaginary solutions. So here, what exactly are complex solutions? This is numbers that occur if you have square root of a negative. Okay. So it occurs when there's a negative underneath the square root. Generally, these are called complex numbers. Sometimes they're also called imaginary numbers. Hence, they're denoted with this lowercase I symbol. Now, the lowercase I basically means you have square root of -1. So what happens if you have square root of a negative number? Well, that negative number can be split into square root of that number times the square root of -1. And then this square root of -1 becomes your I. So for example, if I have square root of -5, this is the same as square root of -1 times square root of 5. The square root of -1 is my symbolic I, and then I have the 5, square root of 5. So usually we would write the I in front of the square root of the other number. If your number was a perfect square, so let's say I had negative square root of 4. So again, I get square root of -1 times square root of 4. Well, this is I, but square root of 4 is 2. So this is 2 times I. So in these situations, you would write the number before the I. But if you don't have a perfect square, then you write the number with the square root after the I. Okay, let's look at a problem that results into complex solutions. So, okay, first let's write these in the standard complex number form. So usually if you can have just the number with the I, but sometimes you may have something, a real number being added or subtracted from the complex part. Okay, so here the square root of 9 is the same as square root of -1 times square root of 9. Square root of -1 is I, square root of 9 is 3, hence I have 3I. Here we have -1. This part does not have any square root. If there's no square root of -1, hence it just stays square root of 1. Hence it just stays -1 plus minus. Here though, we have a negative number under square root, so that's -1 square root and then square root of 8. Well, this becomes I, so we get -1 plus minus I square root of 8. 8 is not a perfect square, so we could keep our number like this. This number is essentially two numbers. It's -1 plus I square root of 8, and then -1 minus I square root of 8. Okay, let's move on to how do we determine if we're going to have complex numbers in our solution? Well, again, we go back to the discriminant. If it's less than 0, that means we're going to have complex solution. And this makes sense because, again, with the quadratic formula, we have this set up. The discriminant is located below a square root. So if your discriminant is less than 0, it's negative. And so if it's negative, that means you have a negative underneath the square root, which means you're going to have two possible square root solutions. So in cases where your discriminant is negatives, it becomes negative, generally the quadratic formula is your best way to solve those equations. In some cases, the square root property might be possible.